Hey everyone, welcome back to yet another live stream. I'm just getting ready here and letting people jump in. I am just trying to make sure something, my Jira, my monitor, and my streaming software was all giving me all kinds of troubles. And so we continue with even being on mute. So it has not been a good day for the live stream here. Hopefully, you can all hear me now. Like I said, my monitor was not working. Then my streaming software wasn't connecting to the stream. Jira wasn't cooperating, and then my microphone was muted. So, but I think we figured it all out. I think we're all good. So, welcome everybody to the live stream. Today, we're going to be talking about running a daily Scrum as a Scrum Master and giving you some tips and tricks, some general 101 information on how to use Jira if and when you're running your daily Scrums. Typically, just for some background, I probably participated in, I don't know, last 6 years, last 10 years really, um, 10, 20, at least 20 scrums a year for the last 10 years. So a good 200 scrums, I would say, at least give or take a couple. And so I've definitely been through quite a few. And I would say that out of the 200, a good 180 of them have not been using Jira. And so I wanted to kind of give you some information, some insight, if you will, into how you can leverage Jira to help you run a more effective daily Scrum. And you don't need to use Jira for your daily Scrum. If you go look at the Scrum Manifesto, Jira doesn't exist at all. And so this is not really something that you have to use, but I've been using it with great success. And like everything else that I've been doing in this channel, I just want to share some of the best practices, some of the common things that I've been doing that might help really give you an advantage, maybe give you a new perspective, and really maybe help you get the most juice for your squeeze, if you will, with respect to using Jira and having a successful daily Scrum. Now, before we jump into all that, let's just do some house cleaning. Thank you to everybody that's tuning into the live stream. I want you to take a second here, say hello. I already seen a couple people give me a thumbs up. So if you haven't given a thumbs up, feel free to drop a thumbs up and then say hello in the chat. Let me know who you are. Let me know where you're at. And I'd love to give you a quick shout out before we get too far in today's training here. Now, we are going to be jumping into Jira here in a second. I don't really have anything else to really talk about other than the fact that we're going to be jumping in here. And if you want to say hi, I'd welcome it. I'm monitoring the chat on the side here. And so I'm always excited to see you all and say hi to the community and say hi to the folks that are jumping into these streams. So without any further ado, let's jump into Jira. And I do have a couple of topics. We're going to be covering maybe about 6 or 7 different topics over the next hour or so. And so I hope you enjoy. And again, just as a quick disclaimer, before all the haters come at me, you don't need to use Jira when you're doing your daily Scrum. This is not a hard requirement. This is not something that is needed. You can most definitely have a successful Scrum without using Jira. It's just that I'm going to give you some tips, some guidance on like how you can really use Jira as a tool, as a vessel to help bring the most out of your team during your Scrums. And so the first thing to be able to do this successfully, you are going to want to be in a Scrum style project. So I'm going to jump into a company managed software project. If you've attended any of these trainings, if you've seen any of my videos, this is pretty standard. This is a usual traditional, most advanced Jira project that we have built into Jira, and this one should give you the most bang for your buck. So we're going to go ahead and jump into that. And you can see that I currently don't have an active sprint, so that's a bit of a showstopper too. So if you attended the training maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, we talked about how to like refine and groom your backlog, and that's all great. And then I have a couple of videos on like how to plan the perfect sprint and how to use Jira as a Scrum Master. So you definitely want to go check out those videos, because today we're kind of continuing the baton. We're continuing the step in the process where you've planned the perfect sprint, everything's appropriately tasked, and everything's story pointed out. And now we're really at the junction of like, okay, so now we're off to the races. Now the team is ready. They're executing. They're all doing their thing. And how do we leverage Jira as a tool to help, again, get the most out of our team and hopefully make our daily Scrums as seamless as possible? So the first thing is obviously we got to start a sprint. So I'm just going to very quickly start a sprint here. I'm just going to accept the default values. This would obviously be whatever values you have. And this is the sprint board. So if you've never seen like a Scrum board, or Jira calls it the active sprint board, welcome. This is the board. This is where once you've locked in your scope, once you've hit that start button, then this is where things start getting very, very interesting in Jira. You're gonna spend a lot of time in this view, because even though there's a lot of upfront investment that happens when you're planning the sprint and you're doing all those negotiations and grooming and all that good stuff, for the next 9-10 days, depending on how long your sprint is, you're gonna spend a whole lot of time in this particular view here. And so I want you to kind of get intimate with this view. I want you to understand what's going on and really how to like leverage this to really, really help you out. Okay. Obviously, with respect to the daily scrum. So taking Jira aside, let's kind of go over some of the basics of a daily scrum. And if you're in the chat again, say hello. Feel free to drop a thumbs up. Appreciate you being here. And if you say hello, I'll say your name out and we'll do a little quick shout out. I'd love to see who's in the community here and love to interact with all of you. Okay, so in a daily scrum, a traditional just scrum from the Scrum guide, right, from the official documentation of how to do a scrum, you typically are answering 3 questions. And these are like the 3 most, what's the right word I'm looking for? They're just the most 3 important questions that anybody can ask themselves with respect to a daily scrum, right? And that is, what did you do yesterday? Almost started doing the retrospective. What did you do yesterday? What am I doing today? And any impediments, right? If you've ever attended a scrum, you probably have heard this. I'm surprised that there aren't t-shirts. I'd love to see a t-shirt. Any t-shirt makers out there, get me a what did I do yesterday? What did I do today? And any impediments, right? So that's your traditional 3 question prompt that every single one of your dev teams or everybody in your scrum team is going to talk about. And hopefully it only takes 15 minutes and you get in, you get out, you cover your 3 things and you're off to the races, right? Then you're off for the rest of the day. Not off like time, but you're off to go do your work, right? Hey, Pink Salt, thank you for dropping by. Appreciate you stopping by. Appreciate the support here. So anyways, so you do those 3 questions. Now, in those 3 questions, none of it needs to do with Jira, right? Jira is not critical. It's not part of the Scrum guide, and it's not really something that you need. But I'm here today to tell you that I would encourage you to use Jira, because the things that I'm going to show you today should hopefully convince you, or at least give you a different perspective as to how you can leverage Jira to really improve the quality of these scrums. Okay, and so the first tip, the first thing that we're going to be talking about is at the top of your active sprint here. Whenever you assign issues to somebody in your sprint, they're automatically going to get a little bubble. And so every single individual that's in your team is going to get a bubble. Now you may be asking yourself, well, what's the point of these bubbles, right? Well, the point of the bubbles is that when you click on an individual's icon, right, Jira will hide everything else so that you can see just that person's work. Now this is critical because in your daily scrum, guess what? Every single individual gets a turn to go and discuss what they did yesterday, what they're doing today, and any impediments, right? And so as a scrum master, it might be overwhelming when you're looking at everything in the backlog and you're like, holy moly, wait up, you're talking about what now? I didn't see it in Jira. What's going on? Can you back it up? Can you slow down, right? And this just adds delays and just unnecessary slowness to the daily scrum. But if you can just, as soon as somebody's going to talk, if you can just click on their name, then Jira's automatically going to hide everything else, and you're gonna see everything else. Thank you so much for telling me, you guys. Oh, I gotta keep you all frosty, man. So let's for telling me about this, not sharing, right? And so this is the little bubble I'm talking about, right? So as soon as somebody is talking, you're gonna want to click on their bubble, and Jira's gonna hide everything else, and it's just gonna show you that person's thing or their things, right? And so this is great because this will allow you to very quickly, as each individual is doing their, what did I do yesterday? What am I doing today? What didn't go well? Or what impediments I have? You're going to be able to very quickly validate, oh, okay, so they're working on this. Great, perfect. This is awesome. This is great, right? And so you're going to be able to do very, very quick sanity checks. Hey, Samantha Mappa, thank you so much for stopping by. Appreciate you taking the time to attend the live stream here. And so This is a very quick, easy way to kind of hide the clutter because this can get hard to find out where everybody's issues are. I only have like 2, 4, 6 issues here, but a typical Scrum team is going to have 20, 30, 40 issues. So you're going to kind of be looking for things everywhere. And so trust me, when I tell you that you want to really, really leverage these little bubbles here, these little icons, because they're going to really drastically help you find the person that's speaking so that you can see and validate what it is they're doing for their daily Scrum. Now, this is one way of doing it. There's another alternative view that I would recommend you at least consider or take a look, and that is when you come over to your board here on the far right hand side, you will have this ellipses here that you can click on, and you can go to board settings, and from there you have this thing called a swim lane. Now, by default, this thing's set up as to show you by stories, but you can actually change it so that it's based on assignees. So this way, when you go back to your board, every single person, individual, is automatically going to have their own lane. So if you have a large team and you don't want to be clicking on the circles, as I just stated earlier, this is another great alternative. It does alter your view quite a bit because if you're used to seeing like an epic to story breakdown or a query, so you do have to compromise a little bit. But if you have, like I said, a rather large team, this could be really good for you to maybe go in an alphabetical order, especially if you're not physically together. This kind of helps just set the like the order of how everybody's going to talk and who's going to share what and all those details. Gerard, thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate you taking the time to tune into the live stream. Hopefully you're enjoying some of this. Let me know, give us a thumbs up, and feel free to ask any questions. If any of you watching at home right now, if you have any questions at any point during the live stream, please feel free to drop them into the chat. I am monitoring the chat, and I'd love to go back, maybe explain something in a little bit more detail, or if you need another example. So please, please, please don't be shy. Feel free to jump in and let me know. I am monitoring the chat here, and I will try my best to make sure that the material here is clear for everybody. Okay, so another benefit of why this is kind of cool of separating by assignee is, remember at the beginning when I was telling you about this like bubble thing? Well, when you go to the next person, Jira actually remembers and holds. It's like a sticky selection. It will hold that last value, so you actually have to go back and unclick it. So again, it's kind of annoying, and so as you move along, then you gotta like select a new one and then deselect. Another con to it is if you have a very large team, let's say you have like 10 people, right? Because Scrum doesn't recommend that you have over 10 people anyways, but let's assume that you have like 7, 10, 15 people. You're not going to see them all. They're not all going to be listed. So you're actually going to click on more, and you're going to get a drop down, and then you got to go looking for them. So again, that first tip works really well. It'll work for like a small team, maybe 5, 6 people. But once that team starts getting larger and you start violating that rule of Scrum and how many people are supposed to be in your Scrum team, then I would recommend you go with that option 2, which was change your swim lanes so that they're by assignee. That way you also have them in alphabetical order, and you can just compress them and go after you finish with each person, then everything's going to be compressed and you're like, okay, we're done. And then again, this helps you with your Scrum. So anyways, that is I guess tip 1 and 1B, 1A and 1B, because it's like essentially you leverage the assignees, leverage the fact that Jira knows who's assigned to what, so that when you are doing your round of Scrum every single morning or whenever you're having it, it's a little bit easier to kind of follow along. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, the big one that I want to talk about, is it's all about listening. It's all about your listening skills for this next tip, okay? When you're running a Scrum or you're participating in a Scrum, it is very common for you to basically, like if you're a developer, for you to update the team and tell the team that like, hey, I've been working on this project, and yesterday I did this function, and today I'm going to be working on finishing up that last piece of that function, and no impediments, right? And so that's a very, very common, just couple seconds each developer, right? And keep in mind it's a 15-minute meeting, right? So each developer is gonna share a little bit. But for tip number 2, it is hard for you to remember what got planned into a sprint, right? So if you recall from Jira, we at the start of the sprint, we went through this big giant activity, couple of hour long activity where we were planning the perfect sprint. We were getting everything all the right scope that needed to be in here, and we were making sure that we had all the appropriate work for all the high priority work that needs to get done. But when you go and have a daily scrum and you're not leveraging Jira, then everybody in your team is going to share what they worked on yesterday, what are they working on today, and any impediments, right? But it's going to start sounding like noise. It starts because you don't necessarily are going to remember everything that you're supposed to be working on or that your team's supposed to be working on, right? So it's like a noise from both sides. The noise from the developer, because the developer may have a handful of things they're supposed to be working on, and it's a noise from the scrum master and from other stakeholders because, and whatever you plan like the previous week, right? Let's assume that we're halfway into the sprint. It gets kind of challenging to remember, was he supposed to be working on that? Was she supposed to be doing that? Or was it somebody else, right? So you get a lot of these questions. So guess what? If you pull Jira in and you're looking at your active sprint and you're listening, so when they're talking, and I'm like, hey, if I start talking about, I don't know, butterscotch pies. I don't even know if that's a pie. What's another pie? Wow, I don't eat enough pies. I only know pumpkin pies because I don't like pumpkin pies, right? And so if I start talking about pumpkin pies and my task, my in progress task is apple pies, we have a huge red flag. We have a big problem because I am working on something that's out of scope. And to add insult to injury, if I'm working on this like pumpkin pie, and I basically start saying, well, I have an impediment with my pumpkin pie. We're out of pumpkins. We're out of pumpkin spice. Then we have a problem. And now we're gonna spool up calories. We're gonna spool up the team members. Everybody's gonna start getting like riled up, right? Everybody's gonna get organized, and we're all gonna start, and we're gonna go to the hunting for pumpkin spice. And the item wasn't even in scope. But it's easy when you're not using Jira as a visualization aid to forget that pumpkin pie wasn't in scope, and it's very easy for you to essentially go to management and ask for resources, ask for the corporate card, do whatever needs to be happening, right? Everybody go to every single Walmart and try to get pumpkin spice, and so it gets very easy to now start wasting resources because again you don't have these facts and data to back it up. So when you're looking at Jira here, you can validate and you can kind of stop, go time out. Why are we working on pumpkin spice? why are we looking for pumpkin? And then the developer is going to have to explain themselves at that point, right? And that's where your developer is going to go, oh well, I was going to be working on apple pies, but guess what? They were all out of apple pie, so I wanted to try doing pumpkin spice, and I didn't realize they were going to be out of pumpkin spice either, right? But this is kind of where we now overflow into tip number 3, which is you want to be listening for updates, but not just for like things that they're working on. You want to make sure that whatever they're talking about is reflected in Jira, right? So if they got blocked on that pumpkin pie, on that apple pie needs to be in that block status. And they started talking about how they finished the fruit punch and they went and got all the fruit punches already and it's still in the status of to do, we have a problem. This is not okay, right? This is how we end up with a mismatch between what your developers are sharing during a daily scrum versus what the tool reflects. And Jira, let me break your heart here. Jira is completely useless if it doesn't have the most up-to-date information. Jira always has to be updated to reflect reality, to reflect what's actually happening, which is why Jira empowers us with these status columns so that we can appropriately capture what's going on in the workflow of the work that we're supposed to be working on, right? So just because you have Jira doesn't mean that you're magically all of a sudden going to be productive. No, your team has to go in and actually leverage and utilize the tool, which is why I love Jira, because it's so easy to use that most people have a very low excuse to not use the tool because it takes seconds to update, okay? And so again, let me kind of recap tip number 2 and tip number 3, which is you want to be listening for things that are out of scope, right? Because if you don't have this visual to help you capture when somebody's working on something that is not in scope, that's a huge red flag. And so Jira is going to help you capture those red flags and nip them at the bud before they become like a wildfire, right? Because way too often teams go and like realize, oh yeah, somebody started working on this, they shouldn't have been working on it. It's like 2 sprints away, 6 sprints away, and all of a sudden it's like in scope, or somebody's working on it, making progress on it, but it wasn't what was in scope, right? You have to remember that the, your team, for the most part, you're always going to want to work on easy stuff, right? Low hanging fruit is very enticing. And so whenever you can, you're going to want to be tackling low hanging fruit. Sometimes that low hanging fruit doesn't make it into your sprint. So you want to be very, very mindful. Listen for things that are out of scope. And also, and then tip number 3 was listen for them updating you on, like, hey, I finished this, or I'm blocked by that, or I'm starting to do this and that, whatever it is, but then they didn't update Jira, right? So if the key line, the ham is basically done, but it's still in to do over here, we have a mismatch between what was being said and what's actually being reflected in Jira. So again, keep those 2 tips in mind, because when you use Jira, you're able to validate these things, right? You're able to actually confirm that the things that your team is telling you is actually happening. Because if they're not happening, then those are those red flags you want to catch early and as early as possible. Okay. The next tip, we're gonna go over number 4, and I do apologize if I mess up the order. I'm usually really bad, and I didn't number my little notes here, so I'm usually pretty bad at keeping track of the numbers. But we're gonna go to tip number 4, and we're actually gonna go back to the board settings, and we're gonna enable a setting. And this setting is gonna unlock another little bit of nugget of information, a little bit of insight, if you will, that I think you're really, really gonna like. And so if you come over to the board settings over here on the right, and you click on that board setting, we're gonna go to card layout this time. All right. And over here, you're gonna see this days in columns. By default, it is off. So go ahead and turn it on. Now, to be able to do any of this stuff, in case you're wondering, you do need to at least be an admin to this board. You don't have to be an admin to everything, but at the very least, you have to be an admin to the board. So once you turn that days in column on, you're gonna go back to the board, and then you're gonna start seeing something very, very interesting. Now, this particular view doesn't have it here, so I'm actually gonna go to a different project that I have over here on the side, similar project that I've actually been running for a couple days now. So we're gonna actually be able to see the thing I'm trying to show you. And so if you look really, really closely here, you're gonna start seeing these little circles. You got 4 circles, and they start helping to tell you a story. And that story is, how many days has this particular issue been in this status? And this is very, very valuable, because when you start looking at these tasks, right, when you look at your stories and your developers estimated the complexity of things, right, and they're telling you, well, we're going to get it done within the sprint and stuff like that, and every day that passes and an item doesn't get updated, this is a huge red flag. You want to be mindful and you want to be watching for these things, because Jira is actually going to give you like a little nod here and tell you, hey, this issue has been 4 days in this column, or it's been 10 days in this column. And guess what? If something is in a particular status for, I would say, more than like 3 or 4 days, and it's a low story point, right? If it's not that high of a story point and it's stuck in there for 3 or 4 days, we have a situation. And the situation is one of 2 things. Either A, the developer, yet again, and I feel like I'm bashing a lot of developers here, but the person, the assignee, let's just generalize it as the assignee did not update their Jira like they're supposed to. Or B, they're really stuck and they didn't move it to a blocked, or they didn't bring it up as an impediment. Both are not good situations for you to be in. You want to make sure that every assignee is appropriately updating their Jira. Because if they're really stuck, right, if we have this create mashed potatoes and all of a sudden we're out of potatoes, we need to know about it, right? Because if you go think back at those fundamental 3 questions, what did I do yesterday? What am I doing today? And any impediments, those impediments are key. And you need to be listening for them, and you need to encourage the team to speak up and talk about their impediments, because sometimes developers don't want to talk about their impediments, because an impediment is a blocker. An impediment is a problem. And to admit that you have a problem is sometimes very tough, right? Especially for developers that are always supposed to have all the answers. So you want to make sure that you're questioning your team here, that you're challenging them, right? That you're obviously in a very empathetic way, but you want to make sure that the right progress is being done and that the right conversations are happening. Because if you just let all this go to the wayside, let me give you a spoiler of what's going to happen. You're going to get to the day of the end of the sprint, and everything's going to be scattered across your board. and nothing would have actually gotten done. And you're never going to be able to get the traction that you need to put into this, like into the ground, to actually make progress, because again, nobody's talking. So this is a very passive way for folks to gently put their stuff into blocked or into an impediment state, and basically then like take a time out later and talk about it and work with other team members. And I'll give you some more tips on that. So I do have a question. So is it possible to put things out of scope in the parking lot in Jira? So kind of. This stuff can get a little tricky. So in your once you start the sprint, that is the scope, Gerard. Okay. So once you've actually hit that start sprint button, your scope has been locked in. So it's not easy for things to be put like out of scope and stuff like that, right? Because they're in scope by default, and you don't want to talk about them, right? Now, if your team member is like all of a sudden like saying like, hey, we were blocked on everything, and so we want to go bring other stuff in from the backlog, that is acceptable if you've actually hit a wall, right? If there is no more progress that you can do for the next couple of days, maybe the person that's in charge of the budget is like on vacation for the next 2 days and you can't actually get an approval, then as long as you appropriately block things and then you have a plan, you're allowed to go back into your backlog, right? You can go back into your backlog over here and you can drag and drop in. Jira's going to give you a warning that your scope is impacted, and you'll be able to bring other stuff in, right? So that's one way to kind of handle out of scope stuff. Now you're actually asking about a parking lot though, right? And so the way I usually treat parking lots, now this is a bit of more of an advanced feature and it is open to interpretation, but the way I would do it is I would actually create a second sprint. I wouldn't start it, but I would create a second sprint and I would change it to just parking lot, right? And I would just hit update. And this is where I'm gonna, let's just say that we wanna work on lemon cake. Somebody's like thinking about it. Well, we can move something into a parking lot where we can then as a team adjudicate those issues and determine, is there enough merit to bring it in and alter the scope, or is it something we should defer, right? So you can do the parking lot like that, or if you don't want to add a parking lot like that, you can just assume that the items at the top of your backlog is the parking lot, right? And so those are a couple of different ways that I would recommend for you to handle a parking lot situation, if you're not physically in person, right? And the other way that I've seen it, not in Jira but just in Teams, is they'll write down the issue and then they'll put it like on a bulletin board or something that becomes the team's parking lot, right? And so that's another way. Now, there man, this question is loaded with answers. There may be a different way, and I'll kind of talk to you. I'm gonna give you another tip here in a couple minutes where I think you might find this one interesting. So remind me in a couple minutes when I jump over to Confluence how I would handle it there as well. So there's couple different ways. So anyways, so that was tip number 4, where we're essentially enabling that time and status, and we're monitoring these dots, and we're trying to see, okay, so how many days has this particular status been in this particular status? And if it's there for too long, huge red flag. Let's go get these changes, right? Let's go get Jira updated appropriately so that we can then take the right course of action. Because again, in Jira, Scrum, I want to talk about Scrum. Scrum is important with respect to communication, right? Because there's so much autonomy, there's so much trust that is built into the Scrum framework that the second you stop talking and the second you stop communicating, the Scrum framework falls to pieces, right? So you need to be able to communicate with your team where you're stuck, what's going on, what you did yesterday, what you're doing today, so that that self-organized part of being in a Scrum team can actually come to fruition. Because otherwise, you're not going to succeed, right? If you're just expecting us just saying like, oh, we'll put everything in Jira, we're all of a sudden Scrum and Agile, there is no silver bullet here. You got to still put in the work. You got to put in the reps to get stronger and better. And so you're going to want to make sure that this Jira tool is being updated consistently to actually reflect the narrative and the story of what's actually happening, right? The real thing. You don't want to like fake it, and you don't want to make sure that other people are basically just like, I don't know, like not doing their job there. So that is tip number 4. Tip number 5 is a plugin. I don't typically condone plugins because I don't like increasing people's fees, but I am going to very briefly show you a plugin that I have enabled only because it was free for the first 10 users. But there is this time and status plugin. and I'm gonna click on over here. I've never used it before, and so we can kind of see what's going on here. We can let's see, choose the report you want to generate. So we have so we have a couple of options. Filter your issues list by assignee label. Okay, yeah, we'll do assignee, and then switch between the table view, graph view, or pivot table view. Okay. Wow, there's 12 options here. I don't know that I'm gonna have time to show them all. Select the period. All right, that's great. And then let's skip all this. All right, so let's just we have a couple of options. So we have a time in status. Okay, so let's just do that. We'll do that one, and then we'll leave it for that board that we were on. Actually, Scrum demo is the board that I want to show because that's the board that we were doing this example in, right? And you can see here, without doing any other modifications, this one starts telling you what is to do, right? And how many hours or minutes or days, I would assume days, this particular issue has been in this particular status. Now this one's interesting, right? So when I move this thing to blocked, I didn't have to configure this, but it automatically assumes and knows that when I blocked an issue, when I actually moved it to blocked, it meant that it's blocked. And you can see that it was in progress for 1 minute. So this is kind of cool to kind of help you visualize. Obviously, you wouldn't be doing this during the daily Scrum because, again, remember it's a 15-minute Scrum. Whoa, I'm not sharing again. Guys, you guys got to tell me when I'm not sharing, right? And so here's a report. I keep talking about these reports. And then people drop because nobody tells me that I'm not sharing. Y'all got to help me. Ivana, thank you so much for that comment. Appreciate it. I'm going to just drop that in here so everybody can see it. Thank you very much. All right, so here's this plugin. Again, I'll show you the pricing for it in a second here, but it's free for up to if you're under 10 people, and if you're kind of just playing around with Jira and you're kind of trying to learn it, you can have up to 10 people all for free. And so I think this is a really cool plugin for you to go and explore and learn. But you can see that for every item that's in here, what's interesting though, it's not bringing me items that are like in my sprint. And so I'd be interested to find out, like, okay, so how do I get only the issues that are in the sprint, right? But that aside, you can see that I'll get all the issues, right? So this is basically my entire board, which is cool, which is fine. But I would definitely like to see only the ones that are in a particular sprint. I can probably read through that documentation later and find out. But what I'm liking here is their to-do is telling you how long an item has been in a particular status for. It'll tell you how long it's been in every status, right? And for a total of everything. So this is really, really insightful. It tells you a lot of insight, and it tells you how long something's been blocked. So when you start talking about performance of your team, this is really critical, right? Because there's things like cycle time and things like lead time and all those great things where you can see how long teams sat on something, how long it took them to actually, once they moved it to in progress, how long it took them to actually work that issue. And so there's a lot of value here in being able to have this insight, right, beyond those 3 dots. And so if you are interested in this plugin, I'm going to very quickly go and look for it back in the apps here. I don't want to take too much time though, because obviously this is not too related, especially since this is more of an activity that you would do on the side. But I highly recommend you go look at time in status. Go look it up, and I think I was looking at this one here. Yeah, this time in status for Jira Cloud. And let's see if we can get that pricing. So like I said, I had it just because it's free for the first 10 users. Oh boy, they're not going to tell me the pricing, are they? Maybe over here. Nope. Okay. Well, definitely go and check it out. If you go and check it out in your thing and in your Jira instance, you'll be able to see the price. I can't imagine that it's too expensive. They do have some good documentation. I love documentation when it's inside of Confluence. It's my favorite. They're eating their own dog food here, and so go take a look at these. And I was really hoping I'd be able to see the pricing is usually visible when you are first signing up for it, but once you're signed up for it, getting the pricing is kind of a little bit harder. So go check that one out and maybe start a trial, see if it works for you. But I guarantee you, from what I saw, it should give you some good insight, some good information for you to be able to really make some more strategic decisions. So again, we didn't really spend too much time on it just because, again, it's a plugin. I don't usually try to I don't want you to spend money, but I think it's a good something for you to explore if your company has budget, if your company has time, and you found that report, this kind of information to be valuable, right? I know some teams like to what I'll call micromanage, right? Because this is definitely a way to very, very quickly get into micromanagement territory. You want to be careful. You want to proceed with caution. but it's very insightful in my opinion to be able to see what's going on and who's doing what and what's where. Okay, so that is tip number 5. We are a little bit over halfway. I only got 1, 2, 3 more stat or tips here. So if there's any comments in the chat, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, let's keep on pressing through. So for tip number 6, I'm gonna do something pretty radical. If you've been following along my channel for the last since I started in December, you may have noticed that it's been very Jira centric. And I love Jira, but we are coming to an end in our Jira journey. I say that very dramatically. We're coming into the end of the summer of Jira. So my summer was literally hyper focused on just Jira. I dubbed it the summer of Jira, and we've just been working on Jira tickets since basically Memorial Day. Summer's coming to an end. Labor Day is in a couple weeks, and as such, I'm going to turn it into the fall of Atlassian or the autumn of Atlassian. And so we are going to start branching out into other tools. Atlassian makes more than just Jira. And so I think this is an appropriate transition as I start kind of giving you a teaser for the next chapter in 8 tech tutorials with respect to where we're going. And that's going to be we're going into Confluence, right? And so what I'm going to be sharing with you here is we're actually going to jump into Confluence itself. And I want to show you a template that is actually built in to Confluence that should help you also kind of manage your daily scrums, right? So just using Jira is one way of doing it, and it's great. It works well. I kind of gave you a couple tips, and I got a couple more tips to give you after this. But I wanted to show you this because I just stumbled upon it. I thought it was really interesting. I really liked it, and I'd love to share it with you. So when you come into your Confluence, this is built into Confluence, so this shouldn't require any additional licensing or any additional plugins. But if you come over to your Confluence and you go to create, you're going to get a blank slate where you're going to be able to essentially create a new page. Now, if you're new to Confluence, you've never seen any of this, bear with me. But Confluence 101 training and tutorials are coming over the next few, especially starting September. So again, maybe save, maybe drop a thumbs up, drop a like for this video, and then come back in a couple months when you're kind of ready and more versed in Confluence. But Confluence is a pretty cool tool. It's a great knowledge management tool, and I'm going to show you a template, a free template that you can use in here. So if you come into your search templates here on the right hand side and you type in daily, you'll see that we have this daily stand-up template. And so if I click on that, this is automatically going to pre-populate my page with the template, okay? And so this is really, really good here for you to again fill out, use with your team, and essentially capture very, very important information, okay? So check this out. So if you never used a template before, I encourage you to, again, basically explore and play with Confluence here. And so you're going to give it a page title, right? So this can be sprint X, right? And so you can just do one per sprint, because as I'm going to scroll down here, you'll be able to see that you have these dates. And so for every day, I don't know why they put it backwards, right? But for every day, you can put each member of your team. And so if you have at least 5 people, it'll fill in. But if you need more, you can come in here and click the little plus sign, and you can start adding more people. So if you have 6, 7, 10 people, whatever, however many people you have, you can put their names here. As they talk, you can put at shift and then their name, and then like this one's gonna go and find them. I don't actually have any users in my Confluence, but it'll go and find them, and then when you do hit publish, it's actually gonna go and tag that individual, and then that individual is gonna get an email saying like, hey, you've been mentioned in this page, and here's what was said, right? And so you'll be able to go and see that there. Now this again is a template. You can customize these templates, so if you don't like what's going on here, you can definitely change it, especially since it doesn't take a genius to see that we're not really following the what did I do yesterday, or what am I doing today, and the impediments, right? But if you kind of do take a second and scale back and think about the fundamentals of why we run the daily scrum and the purpose of the daily scrum, which is again, an opportunity for your team to make their daily plan, their daily battle plan of what they're going to tackle for that day, then this kind of looks great, right? Because for each person, they can give you the priority. They can tell you what they're going to be prioritizing for that day, what they're going to be working on here. They can tell you about any progress that they're doing, and just overall general goodness of the project. And then they can also break your heart and give you some of these impediments here, right? So some of the problems, right? And so now what's great is you have a documented list of your impediments, because when we're looking at the Jira side of the house, you won't always have the ability to actually capture the impediment within Jira. Maybe you can add a comment, maybe you can add like a subtask in Jira, but most of the time, the person that actually has an impediment is going to just verbally give you that cue, right? They're going to be in that meeting and they're going to tell you, hey, I'm stuck on this or whatever, right? For example, in the example in Confluence here, customer hasn't returned emails about moving forward, right? And so you wouldn't necessarily go and put this information in the Jira ticket. You definitely wouldn't like create a bug, right? And to capture it, right? So this is a pretty good alternative here where you can really leverage this knowledge sharing tool that is Confluence to capture the conversations daily, right, as they're happening. Here's your Monday one, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and you can put the dates for each one. It's kind of cool. I personally never use this, but you can put some dates here, and you can say, well, this is Friday the 19th, right? And you can take your time to really kind of format this and get this looking nice and pretty. If you're gonna do the full sprint, maybe you set them up for all 2 weeks of your sprint or whatever's appropriate for you and your sprint. But you can definitely play around with the template. You can make your own template. But I would encourage you, again, if you're kind of like, if your teams aren't making traction, right? If you're having your daily scrums, but things are still not getting done, right? And maybe you gotta put training wheels on, right? Maybe it's time for you to kind of challenge your team a little bit more, and maybe you gotta hold their hand a little bit more. I am personally not a big advocate of this. I am a firm believer that you just trust in the process, you trust in the team, and they will come out and deliver. But every once in a while, you do run into some folks that need a little extra love, a little extra TLC, and I think, my professional opinion, you leveraging something like this template where you have you can basically document and keep track of what was said, who said it, and stuff like that can be beneficial. Just be very careful, right? Because again, you remember from like 30 minutes ago, I'm talking about Scrum is based on trust, right? Scrum is based on you guys and girls and gals and girls and team being a team, and I'll emphasize the word team. Right? You gotta be a team of that protects each other, almost like a family, right? You gotta be vulnerable to talk about your problems. You gotta be vulnerable to talk about the progress. You gotta talk about the good stuff and the bad stuff in this team. And hopefully just talking about it during these 15 minutes is enough to basically be the catalyst for whatever actions need to happen after the fact. But if you find yourself that they're not happening, you wanna leverage something like this to help you be more detailed and prescriptive into like how you organize your team to eventually make the progress that needs to happen. So anyways, again, this is just a teaser here for Confluence. We will be making more videos in the future on the topic of Confluence, on the topic of templates. So we got lots of stuff coming your way. But yeah, so essentially you fill out this information if you want. Some of it's optional, and all you gotta do is hit publish, and then this is gonna go into your main tree page where you can like, it has shortcuts, so you can like go down to Monday's date and it'll take you all the way down. It helps if I share again, right? And so this is kind of cool. So once you hit publish, this page becomes very, very much active, and it's just like a really cool page. It has I don't know what happened to my page here, it kind of froze, but it's got like a table of contents all the way at the top, and so you can just very quickly shortcut yourself to the day that is of interest, and you can go and pull the information from that specific day, and then again be able to go reference that. So that was tip number 6. How are we all doing? How's everybody in the chat? I see the usage here kind of fluctuating in and out, so I appreciate everybody that's sticking around. And this is a moment, maybe I can take a minute here to kind of open up and share the progress. So for everybody that's kind of been supporting me on this journey, we're at 11:45 95 subscribers. So you'll notice that a lot of my hey, please subscribe to the channel has kind of dwindled down because I hit the 1,000 subscriber mark, and we're quickly on our way to try to get to 2,000. And so now the next challenge is, can I get to 2,000 subscribers before the end of the year? And so that's our next current goal that we're trying to hit. But the next goal, the most immediate goal that I'm trying to do here, and I gotta do it aggressively because I literally have like 3 weeks left, is I'm trying to get these watch hours in, right? So if any of you have ever tried to grow a YouTube channel, you'll probably appreciate this, that you gotta get 4,000 hours of watch time. So that means like people collectively just gotta watch 4,000 hours of your channel, right? And so if you guys are watching this and you're wondering, how can I help Alex, right? How can I support this guy here on his journey? Go watch my videos. These trainings are an hour long. I have a playlist on YouTube that is literally just the live streams. So if you go to my channel and you go over to Tech Tutorials, oops, I should probably put more of it in because I'm still not number one here on the thing. But if you come over here to Tech Tutorials and you go to my playlists, you'll see that I have a Jira trainings playlist. It has 9 videos in it. These are pretty much all an hour long. And so if you wanted to just kind of like help out and just kind of let those play there, you'd definitely be able to watch these and really help me rack up those hours. Because yeah, I got 8 people in the chat right now. So 8 people watch 8 hours, right? That's 64 hours a day, and we'll crush that. I'm down to, let me check and see what I'm down to. I am close. I need about 1,100 more hours here, and so we're getting very, very close. I got 2842, so yeah, about 1150 hours left. So yeah, if you guys want to help out with that, much appreciated. If you, again, even just sharing my videos when I'm on LinkedIn, social media, if you're following me wherever you're at, Twitter, if you guys can just help, again, share the love here. But yeah, the more people that are watching the entire video, the better. So anyways, so that was tip number 6. I am not showing, apparently. Dang it, I gotta get much better at not sharing when I'm talking about sharing. All right, so again, thank you to everybody, and again, just the gist of it was, watch all the videos all the way, and you'll drastically help me hit that goal. I would love, there would be nothing that would make me happier than to hit that goal of hitting those 4,000 hours by Memorial Day, because that's the goal, right? That was like the 100 days of summer, and the goal is to hit it by Labor Day. So it's very, very close. I'm still kind of far away, so appreciate any support I can get from any of you. All right, so we're gonna come back into Jira, and we're gonna talk about another update or another tip for you with respect to what you can do in your daily Scrum. Now, I've talked about this a couple of times, and I just brushed over it, so I'm just gonna take a couple minutes here to really give you some information on this particular tip here. Okay, so tip number 7 is going to be this blocked column, right? This is not an out-of-the-box column. You will not see a blocked status in your Jira, right? So this is something that needs to get added. Now, if you don't have it and you're not a Jira admin, I recommend this is something every project should have. You need to have some way of capturing impediments. Okay, you can't just like talk about them. You have to capture them, whether it was in that Confluence thing that we showed earlier, or in a particular status like I have here. You can also do priority. There's a couple different ways for you to capture blocked items. This is just the easiest way because it's very visual. It's very easy for me to kind of see, okay, well, all these are stuck, right? And not only can I visually see that they're stuck, but they're in a blocked status, which means I can also query them. I can very quickly look up what's blocked, okay? And so I recommend that, again, you get this added on. If you're an admin, it's really easy, right? You go to your board settings, you come over to your columns, you're gonna add a status, you're gonna add a column, and you basically pop it in here. Now, some tips here is, don't put your block status on the right side. If you do that, if you put your block status like at the end, Jira will treat the farthest most right column as your done column. So the only way you're gonna get credit for items in your sprint is if that item enters the status of the farthest most right column. So you always want to make sure that your done column is your farthest most right column, so that you can get the full credit for when issues are actually done. Otherwise, if you move block to the end there, you're not gonna yield the same results. So make sure that you have a blocked in here. Again, click your add status, add column. If you don't have that power, highly recommend you get with your Jira admin and have them add it, because this is a really cool thing to have. Okay, so that was tip number 7, and we are getting close to the end. So I'm gonna do a honorable mention for like another tip, which we kind of already talked, right? But I want to just make sure I drive this point home. Make sure your developers are updating their status. Make sure assignees are updating their status. Jira's not going to do you any good. It's not going to do anyone any good if Jira's not being updated. Okay, so this needs to become a behavior. It needs to become a common thing. You can't rely on your developers or your assignees or your team members to walk into a daily scrum and give their update but not update Jira. Okay, because when they do that, when they rely on maybe the scrum master to be doing all the updates in Jira, like that's not very good behavior. So you want to make sure that you're promoting a healthy behavior and you're telling everybody like, look, hey, you're working on it, it's got your name on it, you're responsible for it, and so make sure that everybody's doing their part and they're updating their statuses. This will make all the difference in the world, and it will drastically increase the performance of your team. So make sure that this becomes a very, very healthy habit. So that's kind of like, I'll give it an 8, even though it's really more like a 7.5. And then the final tip here to wrap things up, I got a couple minutes left in the hour. Impediments, right? We've been talking about impediments. We have the impediments column, the blocked impediments, right? In Confluence, if you recall from over here, we got the problem section over here where we're capturing problems. The key takeaway here is you can't have blockers and impediments and not do anything with them. You have to take action. And so when you at least have this blocked status in Jira, you can then go and search. You can just go into Jira, you can do an advanced search, right? And you can tell Jira, hey, bring me back every blocked item. And it's gonna go and find them all, right? And then so you can just save that as a like impediments, right? If I could spell impediments, I don't think that's how you spell it, but assuming that's how you spelled it, right? So you can have that, and then you can bring it over to a dashboard, and you can create a dashboard here, right? Demo. And when you create your dashboard, you can create a graphic of your choice. Whoa, why it didn't open it up? That's weird. So right, so you can open up a graphic of your choice here, and you can add a gadget. I'll do one of my favorite ones that isn't custom charts, because you all know how much I love custom charts, right? But issue, where are you at? Issue. I guess it is issue statistics. It's been so long. I've been relying so much on custom charts that I forgot how to do this, right? But I can look up my impediments over here, and it's gonna go and find them, and I want to see them by assignee, and so I can hit save on that, and now it's gonna tell me all my impediments and who's responsible for them, or if I'm really like feeling kind of adventurous, maybe I'll do them by priority. So if you're leveraging the priority field, I would want to know by priority how many of my blockers are like priority 1, how many are priority 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth, so that now when I meet with my executive team, when I'm meeting with like the decision makers, the people that can actually do something, when I'm meeting with them, we can go, okay, so I have 50 blockers, here's all the top priority ones. If we don't fix these 50, like these 5 blockers that are priority 1, bad things will happen, right? And so you can really leverage your priorities here, and use these metrics here to help you paint the picture, so that you can then appropriately adjudicate it, right? Because if you're just capturing the impediments, it's not going to do you any good. You have to take action. You have to go fix the impediments. You have to enable. The developers have to make the progress. Whether it's a scrum master, whether it's a developer, whoever's doing it, or managers or directors, right? Whoever's got their skin in the game here, they all have to kind of help out, but they can't. It's hard to help out when you don't know where the fire's at. So this is a great way of leveraging that block status column, and then making a quick filter, and then making that filter into a dashboard that then basically highlights all your impediments by priority, by assignee, by whatever you want, right? That's kind of more up to you. So anyways, that's going to do it for this video here. I appreciate you all tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I definitely had a little fun here, and this is a little bit more detail that I usually give, right? Most of the time we just talk about like the listening part and things like that. But I hope that you got some more value out of the nine or so, maybe almost 10. I think option one or tip one was a 1A and a 1B. So technically 10 tips that I gave you here for how to use Jira to really help out with those daily scrums, right? And so if you're sticking around, right, I still got a couple people here in the chat. Feel free to say goodbye. Feel free to ask questions. I'll open it up for a couple minutes of questions. So if anybody wants to ask any questions about anything that we covered or anything else that I might have not covered, I'd be more than happy to take a second here and maybe answer. So yeah, if you're in the chat, you want to say hi, you want to ask a question, feel free to do so. Otherwise, thank you so much. For people watching in the live stream, or sorry, for people watching the replay, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you drop that subscribe button. Appreciate you for taking the time to getting all the way to the end of the video. Again, it's helping out tremendously with those watch hours. And so you can go and watch, I got maybe 10 by now videos in this Jira training. So they're about an hour-long trainings. They're all completely free. So if you want to just go and watch all of those will not only benefit you significantly, but again, those watch hours are going to be helping me out quite a bit. And other than that, I we'll see you all next week. We're still headstrong on the summer of Jira, and we still got more topics to cover. I think within the next couple weeks, we still got another 10 videos dropping. We are going to be altering the schedule once we hit Labor Day, and we are going to start bringing in other videos. And I'm putting the final touches on the course. I'm developing like a Jira 101 course, and so if you're interested in that, let me know as well. But we are going to be launching a Jira 101 course. We're going to be bringing in other tools like Confluence into the YouTube channel. And so if you haven't subscribed, this is a great time for you to go smash the subscribe button. Otherwise, I hope that you're finding all this material beneficial. I know I definitely have a blast. It's not always easy. It's not always easy to wake up at 5 a.m. To go hit record for this content, but I'm really having a really, really fun time making all this stuff and just kind of sharing the last 6 years of my knowledge with you all. And hopefully it's helping one person, right? So as long as it's helping one person, it all would have been worth it. So let me know in the chat if you've been finding these videos helpful, and if you want me to continue these into the fall. I do hope that we continue these live streams for at least the rest of the year. I certainly enjoy the live streams, but let me know what you think. I'm gonna appreciate any feedback that you may have. Maybe you want more live streams, right? Or maybe you want less. Maybe whatever we need to do here, just let me know and let me know in the comments, let me know in the chat. But other than that, thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate it. And I'll see you all next week. Bye.
I feel nauseous, believe me. Never had a lot of shit come easy. Had to work hard, struggle just to be me. Had to rise up just so they could see me. Did what I had to do just to feed me. And what was left over I put towards my dreaming. But the only thing in life that has meaning are the things you gotta work for, believe me. Take into your hands a plan, your own hands can land your own brand. And damn, I feel like no one takes accountability. They want the credibility, convincingly unwilling to put in the hours it takes to get some power. Don't be f***ing sour, take a cold shower. Scream until you're louder, work until you're prouder. And f*** all the doubters, they're just your downers. I swear to God they all let me down. I always fought just to wear the crown. I'm off at these f***ing clowns who were all taught they deserve an ounce. It's only worth it if you work for it. It's only worth it if you work for it. I won't stop till they hear me now. I won't stop till I wear the crown.